2020 to order. Welcome, everybody. We have a full board, so thank y'all for being here. Motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Dr. Cannon, minutes?
Yes, the minutes from our last meeting are in the, included for your information. If there's no discussion, we can adopt those.
Madam Chair, will there be an update on the follow-up for Ms. Gaines, who was here last month, on the Rock Hill community?
I'd be glad to provide an update during the executive director's session.
Super, thanks.
Motion to approve minutes.
Motion in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Moving on to public comments. None? Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I would
ma'am.
ask that, could we pull number 6 off just for a sec?
Sure. Thank you. Pulling number 6, items 1 through 5.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And moving on to number 6 is the deputy clerk.
So and I'm completely in support of this, but I just wanted to take a second. When I was reading this, I was thinking about how just integral Donna Pope is to the functioning of this board, her institutional memory, her organization, her dedication. I was thinking about even with a major injury and having to work from home some, I just wanted to recognize that sort of from the category of unsung heroes, Donna is such an important part of our organization, and I just truly appreciate how accessible she is whenever I have a question. So granting that the addition of these people is going to be wonderful, I just wanted to take a minute to recognize Donna's service to our group.
And you know, Donna Kent, and then you forgot the most important thing, she keeps me straight.
Well, it is very apparent, having worked in many different ways and facilities and organizations in my life, Donna is pretty incredible. So thank you, Donna.
Thank you. You're here.
Okay, and that's all.
Appreciation. We need a motion to approve.
All right, yeah, so I need a motion to approve item number 6.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on to new business, administrative reports. Linda, attorney's report?
I had said we didn't have a closed session, but we have a 2-minute closed session to discuss CFPUA versus Camorra's. And I wanted to give you a Christmas present, but there was a little thing I forgot.
Moving on to the executive director's report.
Yes, we have the key indicators report, the safety report, the environmental report, and the strategic plan update, as well as a request to move forward with the 2023 meeting resolution. So for the first 4 items as informational, are there any questions or concerns?
I'm sorry, can you just include I'd like to add a comment on the key indicators, if that's appropriate. The new meter installations on page 57, is that an indicator of the problem we've had in getting new meters? Is that what that is, or is there, what is that? 'Cause it's a significant drop-off.
So we continue to have significant supply chain issues with meter deliveries. We have 110 advanced meter assemblies that have been on order since early June. Those are the meters that are radio read in nature. That's our standard. We do not have an estimated delivery date. During the initial order, we were told September. September came and gone. They cannot give us a date on delivery. We have 162 of those advanced meters in our stores. They're either salvaged or repurposed meters, or a handful of new meters that we managed to hold on to. And we have 144 M25 manual read meters that we purchased for installation as a last resort. We have a number of open work orders. We have 105 work orders to install irrigation meters.
Great.
And we have 69 work orders to install residential meters that have stopped working, but are still passing enough water that we can estimate billing based upon previous history.
Wow.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
So
an interesting metric.
We may or may not need to come back to you in January and have some policy clarifications, depending upon the circumstances. But as your executive director, from an operational standpoint, this is where we're at now. We're going to continue to ensure that existing residential customers and future residential customers have service for both water and sewer. This will require some out-of-the-box thinking. And that may require some policy clarification again in January or February, depending on the circumstances. We have put on hold and will continue to hold any requests for new irrigation meters. Some of the areas where we need some policy clarification is how to address commercial connections, especially those commercial connections where the meter size overlaps the residential size. But what we're experiencing is not unusual for the industry. I spoke with my peers last week, and this was one of the primary topics. So we're doing everything we can to ensure residential customers continue to receive water, and future residential customers will receive water.
Ken, just to be clear, the definition in this report here, when it says new meters, includes those that we are changing out as well as brand new meters?
No, those are new meter sets.
So these are new
New
customers
yes.
only is what we're looking at here.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's a certain number of what I would call our fleet of meters that fail for various reasons. And we're no longer replacing those with working meters. Instead, we're using the customer's history to be able to project what their water use is and billing them accordingly.
Oh my God, Ken, how many of those? That's just it's going to be that will be an issue. How many of those would you say that we have?
We're at now, as of last week, we had 69 of those.
And the number's growing.
69.
Yeah.
Is the supply chain issue, is it for the manufacturing of these things or getting them to us?
It's the electronics that support the ability to radio read. So we were able to get those manual read meters. And that may be one of the out-of-the-box solution sets that we look towards. We may be looking at new neighborhoods or existing neighborhoods that we're converting to manual read for some period of time.
In other words, you're going backwards, or old school, I guess you would say. Huh?
Temporarily.
Yeah.
Yes.
On the 69 and growing customers that we have, do we just communicate that their bill is estimated?
Yes. Yeah, we would send out a letter to the customer advising them of this situation.
And can we break down the commercial meters as well? Do we utilize the same meter?
To my knowledge, we haven't run into that situation yet.
In regards to turnover and vacancy rates, how are we looking in terms of vacancy rates with employees now?
I'm sorry?
Vacancy.
Are you talking HR?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
I'll ask our HR director to come up and answer that question.
Just reading this report here, just want to know exactly where are we in terms of vacancy rates? Are we doing good with keeping things level? Or?
So to answer that question, I would tell you that we are what I would consider kind of industry standard. We have certain positions that are more difficult and more challenging for us to fill right now. There are technical positions, things like electricians are harder to find positions like that. Other positions, a little bit easier to fill, so it's kind of a balance. We have been able to maintain operations. We're still averaging anywhere between, 8, 12, 13 openings any given week, just kind of depending. But I would tell you we're very similar to any other person in the industry that's working in this job market.
Is it a money issue or just finding the right people issue?
It's a combination, I would tell you. It's a combination of, again, using that example of like an electrician, that skill set is of high demand right now. So that pool of available candidates is very shallow, which just makes it harder to get candidates. And then other positions, we are finding that we're negotiating more than what we have in the past. But we're utilizing everything that we can to make sure that we don't lose someone as a result of compensation or benefits.
What are we doing in regards to internally training others and succession planning like we talked about with Donna?
Yes.
What are we doing there?
Yeah, great question. So utilizing our new, which I know you're aware of, the leadership and organizational development training to ensure that we're starting to work within to ensure that we can bring up from within leaders so that they're prepared. The other thing that we are starting to do is we're looking at our job descriptions. Each time we have an opening, we're going back through that job description and looking to see, do we have the essential functions correct? And do we have the education and experience correct that will lend itself to allow us to look deeper into our organization? Recognizing that there are some positions that maybe a degree is required and must have, or other positions that maybe some experience is okay, and then we can help them get their degree later. So we are trying to be a little more flexible in that, and so that we can help kind of build up from within. So we're doing a couple of different things right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
May I add to those comments? Lori mentioned the paper, what's called in the public sphere, the paper ceiling, the requirement of having a degree. And there are positions within our organization where a degree is critical. There are others, however, in our job description that require a degree where in our work life experience, we have an equivalency. And it has been the standard procedure in this organization to encourage degrees, but I'm afraid that that's probably limiting our candidate pool. So I've asked our HR department to go back and look at all our job descriptions and really ask ourselves, is a degree required, or are there life experiences that are equivalent? And then if we think a degree is important, and we do, you'll see in the next couple of months through the HR committee a request to expand the education stipends that we offer to our staff. So that's something that's been on our plate for quite a while, and we're just working through the long list of things. But I believe a strong organization, an advanced organization, is raising people up from inside, and that means supporting education.
Thank you.
Well, I think that the life experience and on the job, to me, is equally as important. I would never, ever discount the value of a degree, never. But these times are different. And if you've got somebody that can perform the task, do it the correct way, and is able to continue to learn, I think that person is just as valuable as anybody.
I just echo what Charlie said.
One more question, or one more comment. You know, looking at the new meter installations, the number 61 is an all-time low for the past year.
Good right now.
And I would assume that will be an indication of where we are maybe with the housing market in our community. Something to definitely monitor and look at. It's about half of the lowest point so far for the whole year.
Yeah, I just want to bring us back to the potential meter shortage, just so I can get some clarification. We talked about utilizing manual read meters. Are those, does that require a physical change out of the existing meter? And do we have a surplus of those meters currently?
We ordered an emergency batch of 144.
Great.
Which would be kind of a last resort installation. They are somewhat easier to get, not easy, but somewhat easier. If we don't get some notice about our order of 910 advanced meters by mid-January, we'll probably make an organizational decision around pivoting to manual read meters. But it has an organizational impact. We've got to have staff going out there and reading those meters.
But we can't have everything come to a screeching halt by running out of meters. So do we need any authority here now to purchase the additional manual read meters, or do you have that authority to buy them as you need them?
I believe I have that authority. I'm just describing the situation and looking for consensus that we're on the right path. Because there's costs involved with that, community impacts with it. So where we think it's appropriate, we are using the customer's history to project their water use and bill them. That's not our normal procedure. Where we think it's appropriate, we're going to place manual meters. Some of the more outside-the-box conversations we may need to have is if we have low or no use irrigation, and we have no use irrigation meters, should we have a conversation about approaching those homeowners and removing those meters for use in more critical areas? Should we have conversations about estimating meter use? That's very much outside the box. They have revenue implications, both on and they have expenditure implications. So I'm sharing those ideas. I'm hoping in January we'll get our order so we won't have to implement them. But if we don't get our order, those are our ideas. And I'm just looking around the table, I'm seeing nodding heads that we're on the right track. But there's concern, but not concern about how we're dealing with the problem.
Were the manual read meters that we were installing, were those able to be upgraded later, or is that going to be a complete reinstallation? I just couldn't remember if that
Yeah,
was.
you can.
But that was problematic, right?
It is, right. So the register and the corresponding endpoint can be added at a later date.
Right.
It's just a lot more costly to do it that way, but it is an option, right? So we can still, we can keep those for emergency purposes, or we can retrofit them later.
Right.
To
Okay.
be used as an AMR meter.
Okay.
Well, the only issues I could, that come to mind, I know over the years that's always been something that a customer calls, something must be wrong with my meter, we'd go out and we'd look at it and what have you. But if you've got a demographic change in that household where the family of 6 moves out and mom and dad move in,
Yes.
that going by historic use is out the window.
Yes.
So I guess we have to take that into consideration.
Yes. We might very well have to walk down that road and determine what we're going to apply to those customers, and we'll make a recommendation and see if that recommendation has your consensus.
Hopefully it'll never come to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Changing gears, I had one other question, Ken, for you. Maybe it goes into John's territory. Is the rolling 12-month debt service coverage on page 52 in my packet. We see it dropping down. The question is very simple. Is this simply seasonal? Because I note that we are about where we were a year ago with that. But, are we considering this volatile, or what are the drivers of this?
May we place that in the parking lot and ask John to answer that question inside the financial report?
Terrific. Of course. Thanks. That's all.
Just want to mention that.
Yes, so as Commissioner Zappel had asked an update on the Rock Hill Road inquiry that we had the last meeting. Staff is undertaking a lot of research. There's a lot of work that we're doing to understand the scope of the problem. We're having conversations and have completed conversations with the county. We need to have conversations with the community interest group to understand the scope of the area. And then there's a broader policy implication around the Chemours contamination countywide. There is a bit of good news by happenstance. You may recall that last spring, our engineering department brought forward a proposal to submit 2 grant applications for unsewered areas. We did not get those grants, but the engineering department took it upon themselves to resubmit. We'll find out in February if we're successful. We've taken individually some time to encourage the department to award those grants. One of those grant areas is in the Rock Hill Road area. It doesn't encompass the entire Rock Hill Road area. It's the Oakley Road subdivision of that. So we are already meeting some of the requests that the community asked for, i.e. applying for grants to try to address the problem.
So there has been a request made from those people to be sewered?
Not beyond what they presented it when they came to the meeting last month.
Right.
That's what they presented.
So we haven't received a formal application under your policies that exist today. What we've been asked to do is to evaluate the policies that exist today and explain them in simple terms, and then how they apply to this situation. And then also explain what your options are if you want to deviate from those policies. And that's what we're working on.
And so that's most likely also going to be a January board discussion of what is our policy going to be? It's most likely going to need to change to address something like this. Go ahead, Commissioner
So
Wong.
Ken, I assume that you read the report I sent to you. I copied you and Commissioner Zappel on what we did for the Market Hills and Monterey Hills. I get them mixed up.
Yeah.
And Heritage Park.
Right.
And I'm not sure where the request came from, but it was a pretty large number of homes that we provided water and sewer to. I think we got a grant for $22 million, somewhere in that range, if I'm getting my numbers right. But we recognized then in those areas we had sewer that was failing. And you had 2 different watersheds were being affected. And it was, to me, it was a health issue. But I know we found the resources to do that. But I'm not sure where the request came from. But initially on my board, it was voted down. And that newsletter that you received, I started advocating and sent that out to a bunch of folks. And I had a commissioner that didn't realize that I had a newsletter. And the tenor changed, and it came back to our board, and then it passed. And then that's when we put it into place. And once the community outcry came, my board changed its tune and got it done.
So the example that Commissioner Barfield shared is one of 2 mechanisms that have been used in the past or are available to extend water and or sewer. And that is a partnership with another entity, in this case the county, to provide the initial funding. We'll describe all of the mechanisms and all the authorities that you have in our policy analysis, some of which have not ever been used. The petition process has never successfully been used. We'll also describe how a change in general statute complicates the conversation. That's why we couldn't bring anything today. It is a very layered topic.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So I don't see any representatives from that community here today, but I have been in touch as well as Commissioner Barfield with those residents. So moving forward, what do they need to do to ensure to this board that they are very serious about trying to get that service in their community? Well, what do they need to do at this point?
If we would ask just a limited amount of patience for us to give this board a policy paper that describes the landscape. So you all can understand the boundary conditions that exist with this policy problem. And then once you understand that, we would then ask, are there any actions that you want us to take within those boundary conditions? And from that response, we will work with the community. But what I share is one of the options that are on the table is seeking outside funding to help solve the problem through happenstance, and I believe the good work of our engineering department and of DHHS with the county. We did identify at least part of this community as warranting grant applications. We've submitted 2 grant applications now. One that was rejected and one we hope will be awarded. We'll know in February.
Okay. Thank you.
On the larger picture here, moving forward as a county, it'd be great in our strat plan if we had a vision to move areas in our county that aren't sewered to sewer. So again, I'm thinking about Figure 8 Island. You've got an island that's on the ocean that has septic. And from an environmental standpoint, what happens if you have a major storm and things get uncovered? Then you have a big environmental issue going on in our community. So how do we look moving forward in the other parts of our county where water and sewer is close by in I know it's a cost that will be borne by this organization, and again, partnering with the other communities as well, or the county, or the city, or pushing the cost of those residents. But how do we move this urban county, this urbanizing even more, especially in some of those areas, to be on water and sewer, period? Is that a thought that we've had countywide, or is it possible to have that countywide? I'm thinking outside the box.
Well, I know we struggled mightily about who pays for growth years ago. That was the big thing. And I mean, it went on for a couple of years. And I believe you were here. But what I'm asking is this request been made by the folks in the Rock Hill, Oakley Road area? Unlike Heritage, Monterey Heights, Marquee Hills, those people, I mean, they had moved their septic tanks around all over their yard trying to find a place that would accept it, and they couldn't. And they were gonna have to vacate their homes. It may not have been more an emergency than what is here, because I missed the lady that was here. I missed last meeting, that's my bad. But is this something that's is as critical as that? And also the cost implications. I know the people out in the Castle Hayne area, they were, I mean, now they're tickled to death, but boy, it was not pretty with the expense that they were going to be facing. Some of them just been out there for 2 generations and just weren't prepared for that. And I just wondering, is this in that same category, or we putting it in? I mean, and I get your thing about, partnering up with another entity. I understand that. But I mean, are these folks coming to us saying we want it, and they've got 75, 80% of the residents signed up wanting to do it?
We've had numerous inquiries about the provision of water and sewer, mostly generated by the letters that come from Chemours, letting people know that they have contamination in their water wells. But there's always been this underlying policy issue of how any community in North Carolina provides municipal water and sewer to unsewered areas. Before the Chemours contamination, that policy issue existed. And this community had 2 policy solutions for that. One was a petition process that required neighborhoods to acquire a large number of neighbors to agree to a project and an assessment process to pay for the project. The other policy tool was partnership with, in most cases, the county, but it could be the city, for city jurisdiction, to address public health and environmental issues. Those are the 2 means that this community has used to address this problem. You layer on top of that the groundwater contamination from Chemours that has taken already a policy issue and elevated it. And this is very complicated. That's why we want to do a policy paper about it. We could talk about this for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. Our promise, though, is to bring back to you our best understanding in simplistic words of the problem and what solutions you have in front of you.
Like Charlie said, I think no one wants to pay for this in terms of residents. But I think about like Kings Grant and what happened in that community several years back and the issues they were facing. And just, again, I'm looking globally at the whole county and how do we move the entire county that doesn't have water and sewer, just from an environmental standpoint. I mean, I know I sold a home in Castle Hayne. I mentioned this before, off of Holland Road in that area. And the washer and dryer was in a utility room off the house. And they were literally gray piping their water from the washing machine to a ditch because their sewer system didn't have the capacity. And I think you have more of that happening than you think in our community, where folks don't have the capacity with their septic systems, and we just don't know about it. But as a realtor, when I saw this, that was my first time understanding what gray piping was, but it was what it was.
And that's the underlying policy issue that pre-existed the Chemours groundwater contamination. The contamination simply elevated the issue among residents in the county.
Quick follow-up. Ken, those applications for grants that you referenced coming in January, are they for water or water and sewer or both, or for one or the other?
Both.
For both, water and sewer. Great, thank you.
All right, so be prepared for a lengthy January discussion on this. Give it some thought between now and then. Any other comments, questions on that? Okay.
No further comments on that.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to committee reports. I'm sorry.
The resolution for.
Oh, that's an action item.
Oh, we need to
Thank
vote
you.
on the 2023 meeting resolution.
I move that we accept it as presented.
Okay, there's a motion. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Good? Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
All right, the executive committee did not meet last week, so we don't have anything in the packet. Moving on to long-range planning.
Yes, we met on November 21st, and the minutes of that meeting are included in the packet.
Any comments, questions? All right. Moving on to finance.
Yes, the minutes of our meeting last week were in the packet for your review. And I'll ask our CFO, John McLean, to give an updated monthly financial report.
Very briefly, just looking at numbers year to date through the end of October, you can see that the operating expenditures have exceeded the operating revenues by about $2.6 million. That's driven largely by the big debt service payment that was paid on August 1st. That's over half of the appropriation for debt service for the year is paid on that date. Obviously, that's going to kind of reverse out as revenues come in through the remainder of the year. On the capital side, this difference right here is driven by the expenditure of bond proceeds as the raw water line project and the Sweeney enhancements project, which are both bond funded, finish up. This is kind of a carry forward from the previous page. We kind of broke it out because the slide was getting, I guess, kind of busy. So these are the numbers from the previous page, and they kind of condensed for a kind of a system-wide look at the change in fund balance year to date. And that brings us to a total fund balance of about $89.5 or so million. And you can see kind of the breakdown on the different restrictions, commitments, and assignments of that balance. For an unassigned fund balance of around $52 million that we have through October. Just to look at our revenues, I think everything's in line. Looking at ERUs, actual ERUs are pretty much in line with where we forecasted them to be in the budget. These are water, wastewater revenues. You can see they're kind of a little bit ahead. This is, we're 41, almost 42% through the year as of the end of November. And these numbers are a little bit ahead of that number. But that just bakes in the seasonal nature of those rate revenue collections. We've in the early part of the fiscal year, we have the hot summer months and the high consumption months. Just to note, system development charges, that's kind of in line. We're not really seeing a slowdown in terms of development. In the key indicators, there were some numbers on plan inspections, or plan reviews and inspections. Those numbers look to be up. So that's kind of what we're seeing reflected in this SDC number here. And yeah, just overall, I think revenues are kind of looking good in terms of where they should be through the end of November. Commissioner Zappel, your question on the volatility in the debt service number, that's driven largely by going from the bi-monthly to monthly billing. So you see volatility in the revenue numbers, right? And it kind of seesaws back and forth as, this old bi-monthly billing month rolls off and a new monthly billing revenue number rolls on, and that's what's kind of caused that seesawing over the past year. But I would expect, we did that in October. I would say from here on out, that should smooth out, or any volatility in that number won't be explained by what I just said. So, but that seesawing back and forth has been because of that bi-monthly to monthly revenue movement. Any other questions?
I've got one. In regards to system development charges, what is your long-term view on that number being sustainable? You know, as we continue to get built out in our county, and I know we have not really approved any large projects since maybe last year in the Porter's Neck area. I would assume that number's going to start to go down and eventually level out once we are completely built out. What are our plans to replace those dollars?
I think that's a fair assessment. You know, as the capacity for growth, you know, gets used up and we're built out, that SDC is going to be less and less of a number that we can factor in to reduce rates. All other things being equal, that's going to have pressure on rates.
If I might add to that, please. You may recall this board chose to, with staff recommendation, to utilize the special appropriation we received to try to remove bottlenecks in our water and wastewater system. And we have a proposed partnership with New Hanover County to leverage that investment to extend water and sewer lines in unsewered areas in northeast New Hanover County, the next frontier. Those actions we think will wisely remove barriers from sustainable and sustained development. So we can anticipate those SDCs for a while, at least through our 10-year planning window. One day, we may see a significant decline, or this community may choose to turn to redevelopment, which will also yield SDCs.
You're going to see a lot of that within the corporate limits.
Yeah.
And you may recall that they receive a credit for the connection that's available there, but they're always upsizing. So there's some revenue stream associated with that.
Wouldn't it also make sense, though, if, I mean, on the other side of the ledger, the SDCs represent us recovering costs for new work and new infrastructure. So if we're not incurring those costs, presumably.
Well, it's what it does is it compensates existing and past ratepayers for investments that they funded that are benefiting new customers, right? So once that development is gone and we're not assessing those SDCs, I guess what that means is that past and existing ratepayers have been made whole for the investments. I guess that cost, that buy-in cost, has been spread amongst all of the ratepayers at that point.
And then we have customers.
John, included in your monthly financials is the cost of the PFAS, in litigation, et cetera. And this is really as much as a messaging question or comment. Our cost here, according to your report, is $54 million. And yet we see repeatedly in the press when asked about it, somewhere between $43 and $46 million. I'm just throwing out there, don't you think it's appropriate that we should be using the $54 million figure as the cost to CFPUA for the PFAS issue that we've paid so far?
I think the 43 to 46 number has, I think, generally been expressed in terms of the cost of the Sweeney project by itself. Obviously, there's more to that cost pool than that. I guess it's a question of policy there. How we want to go about messaging. The costs that our ratepayers have been on the hook for that have been caused by Chemours.
Yeah, I don't think the general public knows enough to kind of tease that out. We may internally, understand that. I just think as an organization, it'd be a good idea to start using that $54 million to put it out there. it's a huge number, and we're gonna get that back. So,
We agree, and our communication staff has already begun doing that. The 43 number has really been focused around describing the project as it was constructed. Now that the project is online, we are moving towards explaining our overall impacts.
thanks, Ken. One other question, total change of gears again, but it's in the monthly financials. It's on page 104. It has to do with the change orders. There's a change order to SNME, is a 100% increase. Is there an explanation behind why such a large change order?
On the right, here we go.
It was, $90,000, which isn't going to break our bank, but why are we seeing a 100% increase?
Thanks, gotcha.
Thank you. That's a good question. That's basically a general services agreement to provide testing for multiple capital projects, soils testing, compaction testing, concrete testing. We had we put out an RFQ, selected SNME to help with that. They've used up their current funding, so we just decided to add more funds to continue on. So we can have quality assurance testing for a number of capital projects.
I see. This was anticipated.
Yes.
Not unlike the Find It, Fix It projects and the emergency repair, where we place a number under contract, and then as we utilize that number, we recommend greater investment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. I believe we also have a presentation on the project update on Southside Water Treatment Plant. Carl?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think the Southside Wastewater Treatment Plant upgrade project has been a point of discussion, I think, since the authority was formed. It has been in the capital program for a number of years. Currently, it is in fiscal year 2025 for construction planned. And what this presentation is just it's an update on the project needs as well as an update on the project cost. It's just an information item, and I thought it would be worthwhile to do that as we're getting into the planning for our next CIP program, to provide this update to the board for consideration. So these are the topics that we'll cover here quickly. The timing of the project, update on the construction cost, and then John will talk a little bit about funding strategies that we're considering at this point. If we go back about 11 months, when we discussed the FY 2023 CIP at this board meeting, we discussed that an update on the design was planned for fiscal year 2024, and that was updating the original design that was done about 10 years ago, and then start construction in fiscal year 25. And the three sub-bullets that you see on the screen, those are the main drivers for the project. The plant is currently about 50 years old. It is approaching the end of its life, so about 75% of the capacity and the cost is related to replacing the existing plant. It has done a great job for us, but it is approaching the end of its useful life, and we need to be somewhat proactive to start planning for its replacement. The next two sub-bullets deal a little bit more with growth, which is a smaller component of the project, but still a very important component. We do need to think about the whole system as a complete wastewater collection system, and we do need to think about redirecting some flow from north side back to south side by about 2030. And the overall objective would be is to always make sure that we have sufficient capacity in our system for growth, in addition to dealing with aging infrastructure. So we're always trying to balance both of those. The next four bullets that you see, those were some of the additional ancillary reasons for the project, 1970s technology, trying to meet future regulations. It gets difficult. We're doing a great job at that currently. But again, it is a 50-year-old technology, and upgrading the plant will help us meet future regulations. We have had many discussions at long-range planning about future water reuse and reserving space and abilities for that. That is incorporated in the project, as well as sustainability features such as biogas recovery. So on the question of when do we need to start planning the project, building the project, and have it in place, we have an aging infrastructure component. We're continuously managing that, but we also have a growth component. And this slide talks a little bit more about the growth component of that. Again, we have 2 wastewater treatment plants. We have the ability to move flow from one plant to the other plant to some extent. But we also know that the growth in the northern part of the county will primarily be ending up at the north side wastewater treatment plant, the way our system is currently configured. At some point, that's going to be a pressure point for us, and we need to divert some flow back to south side, and we estimate that that will occur somewhere around the end of this decade. So in order to be ready for that and to plan for that, we need to have capacity at our south side plant to accommodate for that. And that is, again, somewhere around the 2030 timeframe. And this is just a visual to kind of show the same thing that I just mentioned. We have our time scale here, and by about 2030, we're starting to see where our plant capacity at north side, being 16 million gallons per day, is being fully utilized by the maximum monthly flow that we're seeing at the plant, or at least projecting out. These are our annual average flows. We've seen some nice growth at in the north side basin. If we project that out and similarly project out the maximum monthly flow, we're going to start seeing some capacity issues that we would have to address. And we feel the way to address that is to divert some flow back to south side at the same time. And that's where you see this orange line jump up, because we are making space at north side, diverting that flow to south side. But in order to do that, we need to build more capacity at south side. And that's kind of what the project is. And in very simple terms, we're going to increase the capacity from 12 million gallons per day to at least 16 million gallons a day to accommodate some of the rediversion of flow and some of the growth in the area back to south side. So with respect to the cost update, the original design that was previously completed was for a 16 million gallon per day plant. So that's kind of our baseline. It's done in modules, so we can look at additional capacity there. But for the purpose of this cost update, we looked at the original design and updating that to current conditions. That cost estimate in 2013 for that 16 million gallon facility was 120 million gallons per day. Again, probably 3/4 of that is replacing the existing plant, and then 25% is for building in the additional capacity. Our current...
Can I ask a question? In 2013, the design, in the 7 or 8 years since then, is $3 million. Is that due to a lot of technological changes and bettering the system, or is that just an added cost in doing design? Does that even make any sense, my question?
Yes, it does. What we had in the in the CIP, the design update, $3 million, was essentially to take something that was put together by an engineering firm around 2010-11 and update. There could be changes in regulations, changes in building code, new equipment that was specified before that doesn't meet anymore. We also have additional land at the plant that we have procured, which we could make some value engineering judgments to change the layout to make it a little bit more cost effective from a contractor.
So just to break it down, by this thing being postponed, it's going to be a better system.
It does, and we have more flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
So we did include $150 million around 2019 in the CIP for this. And then for the 2022 cost update, we took two approaches. The first approach was to go back to the original engineer who had all the knowledge and the design information of the project that was done earlier. And we asked them to update that cost and really go down into the details of that, to your point. Really look at each piece of equipment, how the plant is laid out, what were the labor costs, what were the material costs that were assumed, and update all those. Separate from that, staff internally, we looked at, well, if we would just project out the previous cost using typical construction cost indices that are published, if we project that out, would we end up with roughly the same cost as what the engineer would come up with, just as a gut check, to make sure that we're all ending up in the same ballpark. So how that turned out was, again, in 2013, a $120 million project, but it only had a 10% contingency built into that. For 2022, we again looked at the 10% contingency, and the construction cost was projected by our engineer to be $217 million. We felt it was appropriate to increase that contingency a little bit because of the way the market is right now, and give us a little bit more buffer. So we also looked at it from a 20% contingency perspective, which brought the construction cost up to $238 million. We updated the engineering and took a little broader look on that for engineering, some value engineering, considerations for design build, as well as all the construction inspection that goes along with that. So we updated that budget. And again, we considered some of the sustainability projects, such as the biogas recovery, as a separate item. So graphically, what this looks like, 2013, we had a construction cost estimate, whether it was 10% contingency or 20% contingency, the blue bar being 10%, the orange bar being 20%, somewhere around $120, $130 million. Going 10 years, roughly 10 years forward to today, the cost has essentially doubled in price. So what we then looked at was, well, if we start looking at the things here in the middle, can we justify that, or does that make sense from a construction inflation perspective? So we looked at each year using construction cost indices to fill in those times in between to see where we would end up. And what you can see, we used 4 different construction cost indices that are typically published in the industry, and we kind of took like a weighted average of those. They are not exactly for wastewater treatment plants, because wastewater treatment plants are very specific. They have a lot of manufactured equipment in it. There's a lot of steel in it, a lot of electrical things. So it's not an exact thing, but it will help us see if we end up in the same area. And that's what we did for the areas in between. We looked at the construction cost indices for each of the years between 2013 and 2022. And it does show the pattern to go up to where the engineer was estimating the cost currently to be. Not exactly, but I think that is the dynamic of while you're using a general indice versus a very detailed cost estimate that an engineer did specifically for the project. But I think what you also notice is that by 2019, when we were planning the project, updating it in the CIP, we planned for $150 million. And this is actually not that far off. It is just the inflation that we have seen in the construction industry in 2021 and 22. In the most recent years, it is really increasing significantly. Supply chain issues, labor issues, inflation issues, that is what we're seeing on this graph. And I think those of us that work in the construction industry can probably see that as well. So again, this was an update, but I think the biggest takeaways of this is that we still believe that based on aging infrastructure as well as capacity needs, The project's design would have to be still started here in 2024, in fiscal year 2024. The existing plant, which is 75% of the project, is approaching the end of its useful life. It takes 4 or 5 years to construct a new wastewater treatment plant. So we are trying to look, ahead of, pretty far ahead in order to put ourselves in a good position for where we need to be at the end of this decade. The project should include some additional capacity for growth. The plant is designed in modules of 4 MGD. We have included 1 4 MGD module in this estimate. As we get more into the details with the design firm and the contractor, we can look at additional modules if that makes sense. And again, we would reserve space for future reuse options and incorporate sustainability features. You bundle all that kind of together, a total budget of about $249 million is envisioned at this point through this exercise of updating costs associated with the project. Separate from this, we looked at funding strategies. And there are essentially 2 main options for funding strategies for a large project like this. It is have the entire project funded through a public bond sale, or there are various loan options available through the federal SRF program or through the federal WIFIA loan program. They may not fund the entire project, but those are options that are out there. But to see if they would make sense, John and his team did some discussions with our bond counsel and looked at some of the dynamics in the bond market and whether this would make sense.
So just to give you some numbers to kind of frame what we're looking at, when the cost was $150 million, that was the cost that was included in last year's adopted CIP. We were projecting in FY29 to have a rate increase for an average customer of about 8.5%, which was about $6.50 per month. Moving that from the 150 to around $250 million, what that is kind of moving towards in terms of a rate increase is around 13% as opposed to 8.5%. And looking at going from $6.50 per month in FY29 to $11 per month. So moving that cost estimate from the $150 million to $250 million is resulting in about $4.50 more per month is what we're projecting for an average customer. So just kind of wanted to throw those numbers out there to kind of frame the level of magnitude that we're talking about. So to Carl's point, yeah, this is obviously a project that's very large. We don't often have projects budgeted in that are 9-digit projects. And so this is obviously a project that makes sense to debt fund, right? And these are our main debt funding strategies: public bond sale, WIFIA loan, SRF loan. The WIFIA program, and I'll mention there's never been a WIFIA financing done in the state of North Carolina, and I'll kind of get into maybe why that is. But what the WIFIA program offers is it offers capitalized interest through the construction period, and I think even plus maybe 3 to 5 years after the end of construction. And it also, they offer a term of up to 35 years to pay back that loan. The interest rate is also equal to a similar termed treasury bond plus a basis point. So what we did is worked with our financial advisor to look at historically the spreads between treasuries plus 1 and the rates that we've been able to borrow through the bond market. Kind of the story there is over the past 5 years, that spread was pretty good. Looking at savings, I guess in this context, if we were able to borrow at that same spread, looking at savings that would result in about 70 cents on a bill per month for the average customer. What we've seen, though, over the past year and especially currently is those spreads have collapsed. So that spread's narrowed, and what we're looking at now is a savings of 10 cents, something like that. So now that we have this kind of quantitative picture of what we're talking about in pursuing this WIFIA financing, we've been doing some fact finding to look at some of the more qualitative factors that are involved in doing a WIFIA financing. So we've been talking with bond counsel, and we're going to have a technical memo on a recommendation on whether to pursue WIFIA next month in January. But some of the considerations with the WIFIA are the LGC. The LGC generally limits when there have been other governments that are interested in WIFIA financing. They limit the attractive components of a WIFIA financing in terms of the capitalized interest, in terms of that extended 35-year term. They generally like to see something more like a 25-year term. So that's one factor. There's also some other factors in terms of what WIFIA requires in terms of senior lien protections. They want to, or we have heard from other governments who have pursued WIFIA financings that they want, I guess, superior or senior lien protections in terms of defaults, the protections to them that require revisions to government's bond indentures, which generally takes a vote of the current bondholders. So that's a huge lift to pursue a financing like this. So we will condense all of those factors into a technical memo, and we'll come back to finance with a recommendation next month. Are there any questions on any of that? No, that was a lot of information.
So just to wrap it up,
I do think I have a question. How could WIFIA looked good when I first see it, but it paints a dark picture. I mean, there's never been one done in North Carolina, and the restrictions that they place, they kind of butt heads with LGC.
That's right.
So, I mean, it really doesn't seem to be an option.
Juice not worth the squeeze, right? Or it may not even be possible.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, John.
Mm-hmm.
So I've asked John and our financial team to take a dispassionate professional look at it. From my chair, it seems unlikely that it's beneficial. And it may actually be detrimental to the ultimate cost of the project because of all the things that are added to it and the limitations imposed by North Carolina. But we'll find out in January.
so in terms of what our next steps are, obviously John already alluded to it, is to finalize the project cost assessment and funding strategies, and that's something that we'll continue to work on. And all this will lead up to an update to our capital program that we typically do in the beginning of the year. And we have a discussion and presentation at long range planning, typically in January, that is followed by a board CIP workshop in February or March. I think last year we did March. And then all these things that we talked about today with respect to Southside would be factored into that updated capital program. With respect to the project delivery method, we looked at two different options. There was an item on your consent agenda to, at least for now, proceed forward with a design build option with a maximum guaranteed price. Given where the project is, the investment that has been made in the design already, and leveraging that, it seemed to make a lot of sense to proceed with a design build approach, which was on the consent agenda earlier.
How do you control your inflationary cost on a 5-year project?
Right, that is, there's two ways to look at that. One is you could say, well, we're going to go with a typical design bid build, and the contractor assumes all that risk and builds that risk into his bid, right? Or you can say you go with a design build approach, where you're basically team with the designer and the contractor and us as the owner, and they may have a guaranteed maximum, but they don't need to buy certain pieces until 3 years down the road. So some of those costs won't really be turned into an actual cost until when they buy it, and that is the beauty of design build, that we can kind of work with the contractor during that 5-year period to get the most accurate cost, but also the best design.
Thank you, Carl.
Could you, Carl, just for the record, I know there are a number of reasons why we're not renovating and augmenting the existing plant, why a whole new facility. But since it's been so long since we talked about that,
Sure.
would you mind, just for any ratepayers that are watching, what is the what are the major factors that are requiring that?
Sure. I mean, obviously, a wastewater treatment plant is a very corrosive environment with the wastewater that it handles. So, a lot of the underground infrastructure, a lot of the pipelines, a lot of the concrete is exposed to that for 50 years now. And, we want to make sure that, it's not going to last forever. It gets to a point where it just needs to be replaced. And 50 years is a typical length of time for wastewater treatment plants. We have done, we do everything we can to maximize the useful life, not just of a wastewater treatment plant, but also of, our other assets. And I think we've done that over the last decade by, focusing on extending the life of the existing plant as much as we can, while not running it to failure. And at the same time, doing a lot of focus on our wastewater collection system and reducing SSOs, reducing the volume of SSOs, rehab and replacement of our existing infrastructure. And I think we've been very successful at that. But now, we're getting back to Southside and saying, 50 years is a typical useful life. We've done some projects at the plant to help push that out, but I think the facility just only lasts that long.
I mean, there've been upgrades to Southside, and I didn't look at those things as kicking the can down the road. It was just there was more useful life, and we took advantage.
Absolutely.
But like people, plants have an expected life. And this facility does not fall in the Methuselah category. So we're going to have to look at it dispassionately from the standpoint that the further we go without replacing it, the more likely it is we might have a catastrophic failure called running to failure. So we're taking those appropriate steps to go ahead and replace it.
And how many projects of this magnitude do we know of around the state that have been done in the last 10 years or so?
Well, many wastewater treatment plants and water treatment plants were built in the early 70s at the advent of the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. So a lot of them.
So this is about the birthday.
Yes,
or
This
the
is a
death.
really
This is
good
the
age
funeral
for
time. Yeah.
industrial equipment. A lot doesn't make it this long.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits that we didn't highlight is the state often takes an opportunity for plant upgrades and plant replacement to require tighter discharge limits for the good of the environment. This facility will have significantly better water quality in terms of discharge, especially around ammonia, which has an environmental impact. It's a toxic component. So our ammonia in the new facility, I think, will drop as much as 90% from where it's got 30% removal now. We'll be somewhere above 80% removal in the new facility, maybe as close as 90. So there are true benefits to the environment to this.
How do we justify a community-wide bond when we don't serve the entire community? That could be tricky.
Our bonds are revenue bonds
Mm-hmm.
versus general bonds.
I see.
So it is our ratepayers.
Who will
that
be
provide-
paying,
That will be backing up.
and not the general public.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Good. And the build-out period for this, Carl, is what?
The construction period or the,
Construction period. So when it would be online?
we're hoping about 7 years from now, 2029.
So if we ramp up, as John's saying, which I think is where we're headed, our rates, we'll have a certain section of our current customer base that'll be paying for major infrastructure improvements that they'll never see. And, you know, I don't know what, I'm just kind of raising that, but I know that will be an issue.
I would put forward that it is a very, very small group of individuals that are either moving out or are not going to be with us within that 7-year window. And it takes 5 years of construction to replace anything. Look how much effort we put into installing the GAC facility. So when we replace the roof on our house, there's a period of time for construction of that, fixing foundations. It just so happens in our business, it's not months, it's years. But it's for the good of the community. Every community member has a stake in this. 75% of this plant, 12 MGD, is serving the community today. We have to replace that 12 MGD.
So I understand.
So I'm sorry.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, there's also structural things that we can do, like capitalized interest, where we won't be paying debt service until the end of the construction period. The SRF loans and WIFIA loans are already structured to work that way. That's not generally kind of out of the box how a public sale works, but for a project of this size, the LGC has considered allowing capitalized interest and kind of deferring debt service payments through the construction period for such a large project.
Thanks, John. That actually helps.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Great. Ken, I agree completely with your justification. I just wanted to hear the language around that and for the community. But I know that some of that perception of what I just described is going to be pushing back at us. I'm paying for something that I won't receive.
Then it's our job as your staff to appropriately communicate the benefits and needs of this project. And now that you have given us direction to proceed with progressive design build, the communication plan will be following right on its heels.
It's either pay for it or have the possibility of a major breakdown. Everybody wants that.
Thank you, Carl. I think that's it for finance. Moving on to sustainability.
Yes, the Sustainability Committee met on December 7th, and there are minutes and 2 reports in your packet. I'm wondering, are we going to be pushing up against time? I was going to have John go through one of the metrics we sort of decided on for affordability, but are we going to be talking about this consolidation study much, or do we have much? Because I think we could put it to January if we look like we're going to go over. Okay, that's what, using my executive function is what
That's the best way.
yeah, it's kind of technical, so.
Moving on to human resources.
Human Resources, thank you. The Human Resources Committee met on November 28th to review the Human Resources policy updates. The policy format is changing to align with CFPUA policy standards of individual electronic policies rather than the printed handbook, and I think all tree huggers would love that. And your packet includes a table of revisions for your reference, and the committee has approved the revisions and is requesting the board approval for changes effective February 1st, 2023.
Any questions?
Questions?
Good.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to consolidation study. Mr. Oh, you're different.
Yes. Our consultant and our staff has been very busy to date, looking into the consolidation of the Wrightsville Beach utility system into the CFPUA system. Quite a bit of the effort so far has been in determining exactly what's out there to consolidate in terms of personnel and equipment and infrastructure and what condition it's in, and beginning to look at the, what might need to be done to bring it into the CFPUA standards. So that's an ongoing thing. We're really getting into the nitty gritty now with determining what projects may be required. And there are going to be issues of timing and how that work is going to get paid for. There will be some discussion about how representation is provided, on whether or not they will have representation on this board. And then, of course, it gets into how rates for the town residents later on. So still,
What was the last thing you said?
Rates for the town as they come into the system. It's anticipated that there will be paying an additional monthly charge to account for improvements to their system.
Thank you.
That's expected, but I guess that's still, maybe the town has money socked away to pay for all that already. And so that's not required, but we're not anticipating that. So the meeting's going well. I think both the CFPUA and the consultant and the town all are doing their best to be very fair to every party involved and to be open and listening to everybody's concerns. So going well. A lot of work coming up. Ken, did you have, or Deans, anything to add to that?
What is the timeline?
April.
April.
Yes. There is a timeline in your packet, but we'll really, by February is when we'll have some updates, but by early February is when we will have, I guess, bring our first report to the board. That's not going to be a joint meeting, is it? The CFPUA and the town?
I believe the decision was not to have a joint meeting.
Okay. All right. So that will be the first major update. There will be an additional, there will be some draft agreements and some draft financial models put together in January, so early February, and then things will be wrapping up after that on into hopefully early April is when we'll be able to tie everything together. I'm sorry, excuse me, end of April.
Question?
Go ahead.
Deans, Larry, are you seeing, I know this, you're just, into this, any initial red flags as far as infrastructure? I know that's been in the background on this, and maybe this is just an opinion on your part, but have they, any red flags that have popped up?
I don't know about red flags. There's been some basic difference of opinion as far as risk assessment. I mean, and Carl has some specific ideas about, if this is going to be a CFPUA system, to make sure that we're providing the same service to Wrightsville Beach customers. So there's a question about redundancy and some of the aging infrastructure as far as risk assessment. So I would say it's not a red flag. It's just basically coming back and forth, and difference of opinion as far as what the CIP is gonna look like. You know, that, and then those opinions need to gel, then the CIP comes together, and then the models come together, so it's all kind of a sequential thing. We're just kind of going back and forth on these issues.
Has their system, their town-wide system been evaluated by a third party?
Yes. And we have those reports, and they are being updated to a degree by our consultants. And just to make sure there's an understanding here, I think what's being discussed is that by April, the work of this committee and this process will end in April, at which point somebody, we're assuming somebody, the two boards will be making decisions as to whether to go forward or not. But we're also anticipating probably at least a year of due diligence time where projects begin to get done, but probably a year from when the boards decide to go ahead to when the actual transfer will take place. And so I think everybody's looking to be sure that when the transfer takes place, that we are able to provide the same level of service to the town that we are to everybody else in the system. And so that does pose some challenges in terms of being sure that we have redundant lines and we can provide service should a main break or anything like that. So,
Not the feeder lines, just the main line. You're talking about the line going across the water?
yes.
That line?
Yeah, it will, well, yeah, all three bridge crossings.
Okay.
And there I don't think we've identified any really critical issues with their system in terms of imminent breakdowns or lines falling apart. But
There's some feeder areas that are more high priority than others. That
so
for SSOs and that kind of thing. Older systems.
Larry Deans, yeah, is there any indication of a pullback in maintenance during this period? I mean, I think that ultimately Wrightsville Beach doesn't have many options other than to make this happen. And we saw something like this happen when we consolidated the county and the city systems together, that there was a general pullback in maintenance and moving forward with maintaining the systems as we approached the marriage, as it were, a reluctance to put major investments in. Is the town of Wrightsville Beach continuing to invest into their system, or are they just waiting for this marriage to happen and then move forward?
We've not observed any change in operation or maintenance, standard operation and maintenance. And our partners are preparing a CIP that they would implement with or without consolidation. Much of that CIP is being rolled into these discussions. So the real difference is those redundancies and resiliency items that we would expect, and some conversion items such as replacing SCADA, addressing dissimilar meters. But they do have a plan to move forward if we do not consolidate with investments.
Sounds like, yeah, they're holding on.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds like, yes.
But, it's not realistic for them to not move ahead with consolidation.
Well, their board lives right in the community where all their people are. And I can't imagine them balking at keeping that system running in tip-top shape. Although, like Dean said, there are some areas in there that, it's got some age on them. And if they hadn't had problems, they haven't gone in there and replaced anything. But, I feel comfortable with that group down there that's going to do the right thing.
I think everybody since the meeting one has been on the same page. I think this going back and forth, it brings the reality out, but as far as how it's not adversarial at all.
I think it would be. Good people.
They've been very good partners. One thing that I would point out is it is possible that we do not consolidate. And the proposal would be that they become long-term wholesale customers. And we are revamping the wholesale rate structure as part of our broader activities, improving and updating our rates. And a big part of that will be figuring out how to pay for the Southside wastewater treatment plant. Wrightsville Beach has a share of that plant, both in consolidation or outside of consolidation.
Right.
So I have a quick sort of more philosophical question, kind of an accounting question. So when we hook up new customers, part of the SDC is the idea of a buy-in. And so how does that factor into the number crunching with bringing all these new customers on board? And I don't know who the right person would tackle that is.
So staff has forwarded the concept that there may be an SDC requirement for the water side, but there's a reasonable argument that there isn't for the wastewater side. Wrightsville Beach has been a partner in Southside since essentially its inception.
Got it. For water, how would you conceive of that sort of, the philosophy of the part of the SDC that is an existing infrastructure buy-in? Do you see what I'm asking? It might not be an issue. You could probably make the argument from an accounting standpoint that it's not, but I'm just curious.
That could be an element that belongs in the cost pool, that the rate differential that has kind of been posited out there by the consultant might factor into that. And so kind of de facto, those SDCs would be financed over the rate differential period, 10, 15, 20 years. That's.
But it's definitely a component of the negotiations and the accounting.
Certainly.
Structure, okay.
We're still advising your representatives that are on the board. There's some room for interpretation of how we apply those and what actually applies, because they're a slightly different entity than your new residential customer. They've been a partner with us for a long time, so there's certain parts of the system that arguably they have been bought into as a wholesale customer for a while. But it's part of the calculus, and your advisor, your representatives will bring forward a recommendation.
Thank you.
Right, any other questions? Thank you both, appreciate it. All right, any other Q&A, closing comments before we move into closing session?
Just one quick comment. I just wanted to acknowledge and compliment Ken for the existence of the key indicators report. Jonathan and I and Charlie all serve on different large organizations, and the key indicators report provides a level of detail to this board in a manner that allows the conversation we had earlier about meters. Good golly, I mean, talk about detail, but for our understanding of it, it couldn't happen without you providing that kind of information, and it makes us better board members and a stronger organization. It just occurred to me in that conversation how wonderful it is. That's kind of wonky, I get that, but I think it's really important, and thank you.
All right, take 5 minutes, go into closed session.
I need a motion.
Motion to go into closed session.
I
thought you were out of here. I saw you all wrapped up.
Motion.